All right, problem number 6. I've written it down. It looks a little bit different than what it does on the page. I've just added the exponent of 1. Normally it's not written, but I just wanted to kind of drive a point home. This problem looks weird in the fact that it has this 1/2 power exponent, which is really a square root. But I want you to see the similarity between this problem and quadratics. Anytime you have a setup like this with 3 terms, and you notice the exponents, the 1 in the front, it could be different than 2, because normally we see a 2 here. It's different. As long as the second exponent or the power is exactly half of what this is, we can solve these problems the same way that we do with quadratics. Okay, we'll just have to do a substitution and manipulation, but it works out exactly the same. So we're going to rewrite this so that we can use the same principles and properties that we've been using. So normally in math, I don't know why there's probably some history with the U substitution. Maybe it has something to do with the mathematician that created it with his name. Usually that's the case. But because I want this to look like a 2, I'm going to say that U squared is equal to X. So I'm just going to replace that. All right, so if U squared is equal to X, then we also need to figure out what X to the 1/2 is. So still, X to the 1/2 is still equal, or let's say X is still equal to U squared. But because of this 1/2, we have to add that 1/2 power here, or basically a square root. That's what 1/2 power is. But when you have 2 times 1/2, or another way to write this is U squared and then the square root. That's what this means. All right, it's going to get rid of that so that we have X to the 1/2, or we can say the square root of X is just equal to U. So we need to remember these relationships. Okay, it's just going to allow us to substitute. So what this means is for this X to the 1/2, or the square root of X, I'm going to replace that one with U right here. And with the X to the first power, I'm going to replace that with U squared. All right, then it will look quadratic. Then we can solve it the way we would normally. So let me not scoot up too fast. I'm going to replace this X with a U squared. And then I'm going to say minus 5, instead of X to the 1/2, it's going to be 5U. And then plus 3 equals 0. So same problem, all we've done is substitute. Now when we get to the end, we're going to need to go back and resubstitute. Okay, so I want to know if this can factor. That would be the easiest way to solve it. 1 times 3 will give us 3, and factors of 3 are 1 times 3, and I would have to add to get 5, and 1 plus 3 is 4. So this will not factor, so we will need to do quadratic formula. Now normally when we do quadratic formula, we have X equals in the formula. Since I have a different variable U, we're going to say U equals positive or negative, sorry, I skipped, negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C, all divided by 2 times A. And in this case, A equals 1 out front, B equals negative 5, and C equals 3. All right, once we identify those, I'm going to start plugging in and simplifying. So we plug in a negative B, but it's already negative, so negative times a negative, that will be positive. So I plug in a positive 5 here, plus or minus the square root, b squared, so negative 5 squared is 25, minus 4ac, so 4 times a, which is 1, so 4 times 1 is 4, and then 4 times c, which is 3, is 12. So minus 12, all divided by 2a. 2a, 2 times 1 is 2. Alright, so this is still our u equal. This is what u equals. And we will simplify. So this will give us 5 plus or minus the square root of 13 divided by 2. And at this point, we need to go back and get our x, because our original problem started with x and we need it in terms of x. Alright, so we have a relationship u equals x squared, or the square root of x to the 1/2 power, same thing here. So I'm going to replace right here, since this says u equals, I'm just going to say the square root of x equals these two numbers. So I'm going to write them out separately. I'm going to write 5 plus the square root of 13 divided by 2, and we also have the square root of x equals 5 minus the square root of 13 divided by 2. Now, we need just x, not the square root of x. I'm sorry, they're kind of cutting off. We need just x. So in order to get x by itself, we have to square both sides. So we have to square this, and we have to square this. All right. We have to square both sides in this case. All right, so I'm going to come up here and write my final answer. So I will have x equals, and I'm not actually going to square it out, I'm just going to write it again. X equals 5 plus square root of 13 divided by 2, whole thing squared, and x equals 5 minus square root of 13 divided by 2, the whole thing squared. Now, a lot of work, a lot of places to make mistakes, so check your work carefully. The software asks us to round to 2 decimal places. So they actually want us to evaluate this. This is the correct answer. I would be totally fine leaving it in this exact form, but we want to enter the answer in decimal form. That's what it says. So I'm going to pull up basic calculator, and I'm going to input this information. Now, if you have graphing calculator, let me grab mine just a moment. It's really, really good if you have a graphing calculator. You can input everything exactly as it looks. Okay, so I just want to show you that these two things are going to match up. So I'm going to quit. Now, depending on which calculator you have, if you have, this is the 84. So this is a TI Inspire, but you can change the faceplate. And down there you can see it says 84. It's kind of fuzzy because it's focused. All right. I'm going to type this expression in just like it looks. Okay, so I am going to open parentheses. The way you can make a fraction bar is you hit alpha y equal enter. This only works on the 84. It only works if you have the operating system. If you do not have these features, I will show you another way to do it right after this. So you see how we have the fraction bar. I'm going to do 5 plus. Now, on the left side of the keypad, the x squared button in blue, there's a square root symbol. So I hit the second button because it's blue, and then the x squared button to get the square root. All right, and then on my screen, square root pops up, and I'm going to insert 13. And that arrow says, whatever you type is going to stay under the square root unless you arrow out of it, indicating that you are done. So I'm going to arrow out of it, indicating that I'm done with the square root, and then arrow down and do 2. And then I'm going to arrow over, indicating I'm done with the bottom, and then close parentheses. And then I'm going to do the x squared button. Okay, so when you hit the x squared button, it now says squared. This looks exactly like what I have written down. I hit enter, and I round the 2 decimal places. That is 18.51. So I'm going to write that down. So this first one, I'm just going to write it up here, 18.51 to 2 decimal places. All right. Now, when you have these nice calculators like this, we're going to do second enter, and I'm going to arrow back through the process, and I can just type over the plus sign with a minus. Okay, now it's kind of hard to see. Type over the plus sign with the minus. That way you don't have to retype and do everything again. And then from there, when I hit enter, I get 0.486. That 6 will round the 8 up, so 0.49. So one answer is 18.51 and the other one is 0.49. All right, I'm going to show you how to do this with the basic calculator that I put on the screen, and then we'll go from there. So the way this calculator works is we have to do the square root first. So I'm going to have to type 13 and then do square root right here. It gives me that value. Now, I'm going to do this second one first. So since it has a minus sign in front of it, I need to do this negative symbol at the bottom. So I want to make that number negative. And then I'm going to add this 5. So I'm going to do plus 5. And it gives me this. And then we have to divide by 2. And then we have to square it. So now I'm going to square that number. So you see that 0.486, that is the same thing we got right here. When we round up, we get 0.49. And the same way, if you have a basic calculator, we have to do 13 and take the square root. So now I'm doing the top. I'm going to add 5. It's not negative this time. So plus 5. And then divide by 2. And then square it. And that gives us the 18.51. All right, so if you do not have this operating system, you have a graphing calculator or something like that, then you basically just need to separate the top and the bottom and then square your answer at the end. So I would put the top in parentheses. So I would do 5 plus, and then the second button and the square button to get square root, 13, arrow over, close it. So you do the top in parentheses, telling the calculator we need to do all of this first. And then we divide by and put the bottom in parentheses, 2. So you don't have to have it here, but if you had multiple things, it would be better to just get in the habit of putting parentheses around the numerator and the denominator. So once you've done this part, that's this. We hit enter, and then we hit the x squared button. So it's saying I'm going to square the answer that you just got. And it gives us the 18.51 again. Okay. And then in the same method, you can recall what you've just done by hitting the second button and then the enter. Enter, you can't really see that, but it says entry. It's going to give you the last entry that you put in. So I hit second, and then when I hit that entry button, the last thing I typed in was that. I want to bring this back up. So if I do it again, second and enter, it goes all the way back. The reason I did that, it saves me some time. I can just arrow back and type a minus to get this option, and then I hit enter. It computes it, and then I just hit the squared button, and there we go, 0.486. So I've done it 3 different times. I'm pretty sure that what we've typed in is correct, and we're going to type in those 2 solutions. So 18.51 comma 0.49. So that would be our 2 solutions.